Welcome to BallBUSTERS Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this, the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with all the Quantum Eraser goodness. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a Superchat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video. Now, we are joined by Vanilla Sane, Nth Man, Quantum Entanglement, Paula, otherwise known as Bible Literalist, and Legolas. Very good to have you all.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
Hello. We've also got an open link to Discord, so although there is one guy in there at the moment, at various points throughout the show we will go to the Discord server. So if you do want to join the show at various points to add your input to the live show, then feel free to click the link in the info box below the video. So how are you all? Welcome all to BallBUSTERS.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Increase the enthusiasm now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm excited more than ever. Yeah.
Go. So this is going to be the second of a Master Science presentation once we've got the foreplay out of the way and chit-chatted a little bit. So this is continuing from... these shows have ended up being fortnightly, which I've got no objection to whatsoever, I've got to be honest. But a fortnight ago when the last live show went out for BallBUSTERS, it was part one of the Master Science presentation. And then I do believe in between Quantum Eraser, you did actually do some accounts. Am I right? Yeah, it was part of the fundraiser to get your computer so you can run this show as you are now. As I am now. Right?
Yeah. I got the new computer. It's working great. Just a couple little bugs to go. And that's mainly with Discord. So this is probably your last time of running this show.
Hopefully. Not that I've got any objections. I love running BallBUSTERS. It's a great show. So no objections on my part. But
Any
no,
more
Anthony.
car crashes this week?
No car crashes from Paula? No, I don't think so.
No.
How are you? Are you feeling any better?
Yeah, I feel a lot better. We've been seeing a chiropractor who's taking pretty good care of us, and we have contracted legal advice on getting paid for lost days off for my husband. So it may take a few months, but we should be hopefully by the end of the year back to something called normal, whatever that is.
Yeah, annoying. Obviously, the only thing you're going to get out of insurance companies is just about being made whole again. You know, not exactly any consolation, really, to a pain in the arse car crash. But being T-boned is never fun.
No, those airbags do their job, but they're pretty brutal about it.
Right. Yeah, they can burn you as well. I was looking, obviously, having you had a car crash last time, I looked into airbags because I was like, wow, they sound pretty violent, and they can burn you as well, which I didn't realise.
Yeah, they said that's the first thing they said at the ER was, yep, those are airbag burns. And then, check for broken bones and things. But at least there wasn't that. There was no internal injuries, so I'm happy about that.
How are you, Nth Man?
I'm doing great. Expecting my 6th grandchild any minute.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, well,
yeah.
Good luck. Hopefully you'll get the good word soon.
Yeah, if I disappear, then I'm watching the other 5 kids. So that'd be my answer to my absence.
So you're going into labor?
Very nice. I'm glad you just babied me there.
And how's Vanilla Sane doing?
Doing all right. My latte, triple mocha with no foam. Yeah, it's great.
No foam.
No, I'm good. Here to get my science on.
Just in case anybody doesn't know, the in-jokes that we're referencing is a parody that was made about Flat Earth debate called Globe Earth Dictate, where we were kind of contrasted in our characters, and a few of the Globers that come onto the debate were also parodied by a channel called Darth. So check him out. He re-uploads a lot of DITRH videos, but he puts sort of globe-friendly titles on, like, obviously the world's a globe, and then it'll be a flat earth video. So it's good. I like the idea. When I first spoke to DITRH about it, he was like, oh, the guy's trolling me. And it's, you know, initially when I first watched Globe Earth Dictate, I didn't know if it was in, you know, if he was a friend or foe. It's hard to tell initially, but obviously after a couple of minutes, you obviously know he's a good guy and very funny. But anyway, so check it out. It's called Globe Earth Dictate. It's a parody of the flat Earth debate, but that's where all these references are coming from, just in case you were wondering. Who else didn't I say a hello to? Arwin?
I think you get everyone.
Just you then, QE. How are you?
Doing good, man. Like I said, I got the computer all set up, and there's only a couple small glitches with it. We won't get into any shop talk about it, but I'm liking it a lot. I did a couple tests. No problems, man. The fan didn't even come on. So nice. I think it's going to be a breeze, man. It's great.
Excellent. So to segue into the science presentation rather than drawing a hard stop to the chit-chat at the beginning, the end of last week's, or a fortnight ago now, presentation, there's been a fair few people in the chat rooms of other live shows and premiering streams talking about this very subject. And it still gets talked about in regards to their need to adjust their just so stories, leading to them declaring that science does not prove things. So regardless of what's on the presentation itself, I just want to summarise that just right here, right now. Science proves things. It proves or disproves your prediction. And in science, a prediction's known as a hypothesis. The method is empirical, otherwise nobody would bother to do it. It wouldn't be useful if it wasn't. So the empirical method is empirical because of the hypothesis. The hypothesis has got two sides, and you will validate or invalidate your hypothesis upon performing systematic experimentation. So science absolutely, without question, proves things or disproves things, depending on whether or not you have a valid prediction. So all these idiots that are saying science doesn't prove things, take that to mean what it actually means. It means their pseudoscience, that they call science, in brackets, doesn't prove things. Not science, pseudoscience. Sorry, Gary, that's it. That's me done. That was my little disclaimer.
No, that's precisely. You got it. And I went back to that video or last week's presentation this morning because I wanted to get a couple things out of the info box. And I just scrolled down the comments. And 95 to 98% of all the comments was about that stupid Einstein letter. They weren't even talking about the substance of the presentation. Oh, the Einstein letter's a fraud. Who cares? We already pummeled Einstein 6 ways from Sunday. You didn't pay attention to the presentation, but that's okay. Just whistle past the graveyard. It's no problem. And when I catch you out there, I'm going to friggin' eviscerate you with it. Clowns.
From memory, the forged Einstein rejection letter was also critiqued. From memory, you said the guy who's giving them a rejection clearly doesn't understand science either, as he describes it as a theory when describing Einstein's ideas. Well, not a scientific theory, clearly. So using that declaration, the fake document was also critiqued reasonably heavily in terms of the ineptitude of the so-called author or rejection. Go ahead.
Right. Oh, there he is. What's up, Tony? Hey.
Hey, Anthony. Sleeping Warrior, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have you.
Oh, excellent. Let me know when we get to the cause and effect bit.
That's this whole presentation. It's a science presentation.
Yeah, we're pretty much smack dab in the middle of cause and effect, bro.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, if you've got a point,
you know what?
Pretty much.
Go ahead, Anthony. The moment is all yours now, clearly.
You know how I reported recently that they changed on Einstein's theory of general relativity on the Wikipedia page. They removed the word superseded and they replaced it with refined. And then there was a bit of back and forth in the history about who was doing what and for what reason. And basically, it demonstrates they don't like certain phrases. Well, that fiend has striked again on Wikipedia. John, would you mind doing me the citation that you present for, when you talk about cause and effect, one of your citations is the Wikipedia link for the word experiment. In there, it says about cause and effect. Literally, it's cause and effect. If you open that link now, you'll see that it doesn't appear anymore. It's not there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but if you look on the Wayback Machine...
Hold on, Anthony. Tell me when the right moment is to get you on screen, Quantum Eraser, and I will do so.
No, you can go on screen right now. That's fine. I got that link. This is part of the presentation, in fact. Ironically. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're on now.
So what I'll do, John, if you don't mind, I will send you a link inside chat for the Wayback Machine, dated the 14th of April this year. Would you mind opening the Wayback Machine up for the audience and show them what it said then, and then show what it says now, and you'll see that someone's changed it again because they don't like that word cause and effect.
That doesn't matter. Hold on 1 second. This is easy. So I got this off Wikipedia a while ago, right? This is too easy. 1 second. I don't need the Wayback Machine. You know why?
Why?
Because I'll guarantee other people have cited it from Wiki. That's why. So let's copy this. You're saying that this isn't in Wiki anymore, right?
No, they took it out, specifically the bit about cause and effect. The rest of it's still there, just not the cause and effect bit. And I wonder why that might be.
Just take the substance out, right?
Just while you're searching. So shout out to Eagle Plane and Anchor, who says, the effect is Superchat. The cause is Smash. Thank you very much for Superchat.
All right, hold on 1 second. You still got my screen up?
I have, although it's slightly obscured by the chat, so I'll just sort that out.
Let's see here. Experiment. What's this? Course hero and experiment. Carried out. Refute. Experiments. Cause and effect. Let's hit this one. So, somebody else cited it. Course hero. An experiment is a procedure carried out to verify, refute, or validate a hypothesis. Experiments provide insight into cause and effect. This is the same one. Right?
Yeah. Now go to Wikipedia and click that link that you use, and we'll demonstrate that it's not there now. And then if you just click the Wayback Machine and then show that it did exist and someone's deleted it, I'm going to say it's somebody on this topic of conversation and they don't like that cause and effect bit.
Yeah, because anyone and their sister can go into Wiki and change it. This is well known. You already know that, right? Hold on a second. Let me try something else here. Course hero. Yeah, they took it. You're right. They took it out. An experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I want you to show, John, is the Wayback Machine where it shows that it was in.
Yeah,
just click the link in the chat.
I don't think that's necessary. People have cited it with links where they've cited it. Yeah, their links will be dead now, but it doesn't change the fact that people have used it. So yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. It was on the Wayback Machine. If you want to just prove that it was there, I don't think that's necessary. You can if you want to, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, but the point we're making is not really that it's there. The point we're making is that someone's deleted it because they don't like us saying cause and effect.
Yeah, that's science. If you don't like cause and effect reasoning, you don't like science. Well, yeah, that would be the pseudoscientists that don't like real science.
Yeah. The likes of the Rumpus and George Natchuk and all them people that push fake science.
Ah, here it is. Yeah, with the Wayback Machine. Yep. Let me make it a little bigger. Yeah.
They don't like it, do they? They have to change their science for no good reason other than to hide keywords like superseded rather than refined and cause and effect. And now it's just missing.
Yep, there it is right there. Experiments provide insight into cause and effect. Yeah. Too funny.
Hey, Anthony, aren't they just proving cause and effect by changing it?
Yeah.
But not scientifically.
No,
yeah,
but they're causing it, right?
Yeah.
They're just hiding the fact that their own science kills them and they have to change the narrative to react because they realise that they're fucked.
Gotta start getting this language correct. Their own pseudoscience kills them.
Yeah.
Too
They don't
funny,
have
man.
science. That's the point of these presentations. So you've done your job eloquently, as always, Anthony, which is to keep the conversation nice and light-hearted just for the introduction. And then we get into the meat and potatoes. Hopefully now.
That's all right. We don't need wiki. We got the Institute of Physics and other institutions saying cause and effect. So it's well done anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It just shows it's a screaming example of you got to be careful. I used to have a citation from Harvard talking about their students using references and citations from wiki and saying, don't do it. You know, it's good if you're just having a conversation with your neighbor or a buddy to pull something out of wiki, but don't you dare reference that in any academic paper. They'll slam you. I think they got rid of that citation too. I'm going to have to go back and search that out. I will here.
What, they got rid of the citation specifically detailing that you shouldn't cite wiki?
Yep.
I like it. Quick, bury it. Put it down the memory hole, quick.
A citation saying that you can't get rid of citations, and they got rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. The irony is great.
The irony is wonderful.
Delicious. Right, I'm going to pop you on. I'm going to present you, QE. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Are we done with the foreplay?
Yeah, I think so. We've done well.
All right.
Almost 20 minutes.
All right. Let me know when you're ready.
Yep, you're on.
All right. For a brief review, the king of the scientific method is experiment. It's birthed from the queen hypothesis, which is birthed from the first step of the scientific method. Observe a natural phenomenon. We went over this in part 1. It's a good review. The critical, indispensable steps are 1, observe a natural phenomena. 2, formulation of a hypothesis. 3, experiment. It's just that simple. You cannot have science, i.e. natural science, without these 3. 66% of the experiment is the hypothesis. 50% of the hypothesis is the natural phenomena observed. So you can't get around these 3. I don't care what you put in here. Put flowers around it, color it differently. It doesn't matter. These 3 steps need to be a part of the scientific inquiry. If it's not, it's pseudoscience. If it's masquerading as science and it doesn't use these 3, then it's pseudoscience. Period. End of story. The scientific method, this is from the University of Rochester Physics Labs. The scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. That is to say, that it doesn't have experiment, it's not science because it's required. Does everyone understand that out there? It's very simple. So, what is an experiment? Or how important is experiment? So, from Luar's E.g., Introduction to the Theory and Application of Molecular and Quantum Mechanics, the final arbiter of truth in science is experiment. From the Chair of Physics at Yale, the only way things change in physics is experiments. Everything, people, is based on experiment. That's the only way we change our mind. From Richard Feynman, if it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. So, if you don't have an experiment, you don't have the key. You can't get in. It's just that simple. From Max Planck, experiment is the only means of knowledge at our disposal. Everything else is poetry and imagination. Ballers, you know about this one, don't you? The imagination part. From the University of Rochester Physics Labs again, the scientific method requires, there's that word again, that a hypothesis be ruled out or modified if its predictions are clearly, repeatedly incompatible with experimental tests. You see this? Its predictions must agree with experimental results. Experiment is supreme. Experimental verification of hypothetical predictions is absolutely necessary. So, what is an experiment? Well, from Penn State University, there should be 3 categories of variables in every experiment: dependent, independent, and controlled. The dependent variable, the effect or the result or the prediction; the independent variable, the cause, that which is varied or manipulated by the scientist to produce the effect. We're going to concentrate on this one a little further in the presentation today. Controlled variables that are held constant so as not to confound the test. Makes sense. From explorable.com, there are 3 important variables that you have to remember when you are designing your experiment. Shocker, independent variable, that is what you change in order to provide the result. Dependent variable, this is what you are measuring. And controlled variables, these are the things that never change. Why? Because you don't want it impacting the independent-dependent variable relationship, because it'll convolute the results. From the Institute of Physics, when planning an investigation, students need to identify the variables that they consider significant and then select the ones that they want to look at for what? Cause and effect. If possible, any other variables that will affect the outcome of the experiment need to be kept constant during the investigation. What do we have? Independent variable, dependent variable, and control variables. A repeating refrain. From Wiki, we just went over this one, the one that they just changed. Too funny. An experiment is a procedure to carry out to support, refute, or validate a hypothesis. Experiments provide insight into what? Cause and effect, by demonstrating what outcome occurs when a particular factor is manipulated. I wonder what that particular factor being manipulated is. It's a mystery. And finally, from McClellan, Kristen, The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method, experiment. Once the hypothesis has been established, it is time to test it. The process of experimentation is what sets science apart from other disciplines. We heard this from above, right? From the University of Rochester Physics Labs. They said the same thing. The process of experimentation is what sets science apart from other disciplines. They said it distinguishes, but the same thing. And it leads to discoveries every day.
Sorry, just to interrupt. Sorry.
Yeah.
I want everybody to prick their ears up and pay attention to this next statement, please. If you're just chatting in the chat, this is where you need to be listening to what's actually being said. Go ahead.
An experiment is designed to prove or disprove the hypothesis. If your prediction is correct, you will not be able to reject the hypothesis. Let me say it again. An experiment is designed to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Yeah, that's why you made the hypothesis. So you can prove it or reject it. That's why you did it. That's why you constructed it. That's why you constructed the experiment. You got the experiment designed. That's why you do these things. Duh. Questions, comments?
I will go around the whole panel. But yeah, so that was the point I started out with, which is to say that all those people out there claiming that science does not prove things, know instinctively that means they're not doing science. That whatever they're punting is definitely not going to be science, because they're pseudoscientists, the people who claim that science doesn't prove things. It does. It proves or disproves your prediction. Secondly, the prediction is useless without the experiment. So to say, oh, well, I've got a hypothesis, because that sounds scientific, so what? Having a hypothesis is meaningless unless it's been validated or invalidated. Unless you've proven or disproven your prediction, it's worthless. Anyway, we'll start with ladies if Paul is around. You there?
Yes. We've done this so many times. It's like, what else can I say other than I've been doing a lot of coding lately, and it's the same thing there. It's not science, but it's just smart that if you write code for some app or whatever, the first thing you try to do is break it. You try to make it fail. You try to enter data that no sane person would enter and make it mess up. And so your software doesn't go live before it's been thoroughly tested. But what passes for science today is just it's what I would call the Microsoft method, where you let the general public troubleshoot your app. And it doesn't go over very well with the general public. But when they're trying, like you say, when they claim something is science, they have to do their own methods, which everybody agrees are good methods, whether it's science or programming or whatever it is. And if they're not doing it, then it isn't science. Because what they'll say when they say science doesn't prove anything is to say that what they really never did was science in the first place because they didn't adequately test it. That's why it failed. So they're admitting that much when they say science doesn't prove anything. They're saying there's no science.
Yeah, what they actually mean is we have no science. We have pseudoscience. So best to say it doesn't prove things just in case we need to change our story a little bit down the road. So big shout out to David Rakia Gafford, who says snowflakes want free school. Just listen up. Real science being taught here. Rakia life. Massive shout out to David Rakia Gafford for the super chat. Anthony? Bloody hell.
Did he go Bubbo's?
Probably. You there, Arwin?
Yeah.
Any comments? Cause and effect? Proving,
Oh
disproving?
dear. Yeah, it's just... Look, I get it. It's so basic. It is indeed to prove or disprove through the mechanism. It has nothing to do even with calculations or amounts. It just has to do with the variation, with the actual effect, changing it yourself. And it's that simple, but with everything that's going around out there, it's just been convoluted so many times in so many ways that it's just become very dreamy in general. Like, most people just they've fallen for the trap that it's kind of like, no, it's for everyone now. You know, it's very easy to do. You don't have to abide by any strict rules, basically. Or it's supposedly some kind of philosophical extremity, not proving anything. It's also not exactly what that means. It's just, it's so basic. That's it.
I was just going to say science.
I do have something I want to add.
Yeah, you can go next. I did actually come to you first. I was just going to say science does have its roots in philosophy. That doesn't change the fact that it's empirical.
Yes.
Anyway, Anthony, moving on.
It's just perfectly timed when I did my egg experiment, and some of the ballers picked me up on, I don't know what these numbers mean. They're just numbers, or whatever phraseology it was that I used at the time. Of course, when you're saying that it's cause and effect, and it's not quantification, calculations, or anything that goes beyond cause and effect, that's the reason why I said that line, because it's a tip of the cap to cause and effect, because it doesn't matter what the numbers are. That's why I said it. And I'm surprised it's took this long, really, for anyone to pick up on it. But the fact is, it's not about measuring the effect. It's about demonstrating what's causing it. So the quanta part is irrelevant. It is cause, it is effect. And I'm okay with that, because it's dead easy to understand, and it unravels every one of their nonsense claims. And for me, it's you don't have to convolute it. You just ask, what is the cause? And then they go, bleh, and they can't give you a cause. They just explain it with logic and reason, or what they claim is some arithmetic or science or some technology or whatever. But if they can't pinpoint specifically what the cause was, it's not science. It's that easy. I'm all right with that. It works.
Nth man?
Not too much, other than science doesn't prove things is a cop-out statement. It's only used by them because they can't prove what they're saying.
No, science does prove things. It proves what causes the effect, right? And it also proves which one you're going to accept. You're going to either prove your alternative hypothesis, or you're going to accept your null. It does prove one of them, though.
Yeah, but that's not what I said. I said when they use the phrase "science doesn't prove things" in quotation marks, is because what they've been saying hasn't been vetted through the scientific method and doesn't prove what they're saying. So that's why they have to say science doesn't prove things. But if they had proof, they'd be on the top of the block saying, look what science proved. But they don't, because it doesn't.
Yep.
Vanilla saying? Deal with this?
Yes, I am. I don't know. I'll just say I find it funny that it used to be that the ballers would say, they would assert that they have science to prove they're a spinning ball in a vacuum. And it seems like when when I say we, I mean like flat earthers started asking, all right, so where's the science? Where are the experiments that you have that prove what you're trying to assert? All of a sudden, they don't have any. And now it's become, well, science doesn't prove things. And I always find that funny when ballers say that. You know, I've been hearing that a lot, you know, be it here or Discord or wherever. A lot of the ballers, they like to say, well, science doesn't prove things. And it's like, what do you mean science doesn't prove things? You have a hypothesis. You're trying to either prove or disprove that. You know, and it's like, all of a sudden now that you guys are not worried about cause and effect. It's funny that Anthony came in here and said they took out cause and effect from Wiki, because vaguely that's another thing that they've been saying. We're not concerned with cause. We just see the effects, and we just assert that those effects are what we're trying to argue. So that they don't care anymore about actual cause and effect. They just see effects and say, yep, that's what it is. It's because we live on a spinning ball. Just accept it. We don't care about the cause. We just see the effects, and that's what we're arguing. And yeah, it's pretty sad that they had to take it out of Wiki. I mean, they're changing the rhetoric in real time, and it's obvious.
But their projected criticism of us back in 2015, 16, and spilling into 2017. If I say these two words, I'm sure it'll prick the hairs on the back of everyone's necks up. Flat earthers are, quote, science deniers, and how the tables have turned. What that was projection of their own failings. Like any con man, most of the long con is built up on bluff. Well, they were bluffing us the whole time. We've got science. Science proves we're on a spinning ball. That's what we were told. What are flat earthers? Well, they're science deniers. Well, let's break that down. What does that actually mean? It means they're projecting their pseudoscience as proving things, whilst simultaneously calling us pseudoscience deniers. Now, I'm happy to, now that it's been broken down, go along with that. Yeah, we are absolutely denying what they call science. Because it isn't science. It's pseudoscience. Now, the tables have turned 2017, 18 and 19 to the point where, like you say, they're having to edit Wiki to change the fundamental principles of science so that it meets their ends when they peddle their pseudoscience. Well, isn't this an interesting turn of events? The flat earthers are the ones talking about actual science, cause and effect relationships, hypothesis-based predictions that are validated or invalidated by systematic experimentation. We, the flat earthers, are talking about science. The purveyors of the heliocentric model aren't. They're pseudoscientists. And this is what will change the game in this arena. The recognition of this very detail. The people who tell you are on a globe are pseudoscientists. They don't have any scientific validity. And what are we talking about here and trying to educate our audience in as flat earthers? Actual science. Legitimate cause and effect relationships being established through scientific prediction hypothesis that's validated or invalidated with systematic experimentation. That's what we're talking about as flat earthers. Quick, censor them!
Like you said, 2015, 16, and 17. Science proves the spinning ball. Well, how can science prove the spinning ball in 2015, 16, and 17? Now we're getting science doesn't prove things. Ballers, hello, essay. You're holding two mutually exclusive truths at the same time. Clowns. Gotcha. I got you by the short hairs. I had you by the short hairs the first day I arrived here, and I'm never letting go.
As it's on this channel, you might as well do a quick plug to when that very first discussion within a fortnight of you being in the Flat Earth arena, what was it, late 2015? Your discussion with Rumpus.
Early 2016.
Early 2016. So when's that actually going to air?
Which one?
The very first discussion you had. You came in and debated Rumpus immediately, pretty much.
Oh, yeah, the Rumpus. Yeah. That's a good question. How about this? I'll give myself some leeway. In the next 2 months, I want pomp and circumstance with this.
Fair enough. It's going to get a fair few mentions, so check it out. It was, like I say, late 2016. Quantum Eraser had only just joined the circuit, and on a channel with virtually nobody watching, he stepped in the ring with Paper Explanator as the debate moderator, if you can call it that, and Rumpus being the person with the affirmative claim that Earth is a sphere. It didn't end well.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, that was on Sensei's channel, and I think it was the first week, June 2016.
Okay. Mid 2016. That was about the time you came into this arena, right? You'd been debating other fundies before that.
Yeah, evolution fundies for the past 9 years before that. Yep.
With virtually the same arguments, right?
They are the same arguments. It was the evolutionist and the Einstein and Newtonian peddlers. So I was in this game for a long time. Right? It was an easy jump.
Right. So linking that, you back in the day would ask in chat threads and forums when you had claimed scientist in air quotes, post a formal hypothesis for anything. I love that. That cracks me up every time.
Don't you like that one?
I like that a lot. Post a formal hypothesis for anything. Let's see how you get on. Most of the time, they don't know what a hypothesis is. Sorry.
No, they didn't get on. They still don't get on. Ask people. Put them up against a wall with it. Especially, see, I always sat back and waited for the self-professed PhDs to show their little cards or show their face, and then I jumped all over them. So I just look back, just recon forums, just waiting for them to say something, because eventually their pride's going to get in the way and they're going to say something, and they always come out with their credentials. Yeah, I love it when you do that. Just waiting for you.
It's a shame Betty's not on the call. She's in the chat. I'm hoping she'll join so she can back me up on this, what I'm about to say. So, yeah, I get a fair few compliments on my ability to debate people. And the main thing, the main point, the one crucial detail that I've learned that means I win when debating Flat Earth is this. Knowing what actual science is means I win. It is pretty much as simple as that. Now, the reason I'm saying I hope Betty will join the call, if she does, I'm sure she'll pipe up. If she doesn't, no pressure, Betty, no pressure. She went and had 2 debates, and she was mentored on both occasions by Quantum Eraser. Now, I'm going to hopefully get a bit of participation from Quantum Eraser. What was the tip that you gave Betty?
Negative. She wasn't mentored. I told her a long time ago, I think before she went on Red's Pretenderic, I said, listen, I said, when he's going to throw some curveballs at you, just stick with the scientific method. It'll never treat you badly. Right? That's what I said.
Right. Yeah. So the point being that with that one bit of advice, if you can understand and argue from a position of actual science, and I'm going to say it again, we're flat earthers giving you this information. Abide by the scientific method and you'll win as a flat earther. What does that tell you, globies? That when you fight with us using empiricism and science, you lose. That says it all. I'm getting all fired up for a reason. We've been lied to, right? The Earth's not a sphere. Why have we been lied to? Well, because people peddle pseudoscience and call it science. And then you come to a flat Earth channel like this, Quantum Eraser channel. He's predominantly talking about the nature of our reality. The nature of our reality being it's a plane. It's not a sphere flying through a vacuum. And we're the ones that get censored. We're the ones that get wiki disclaimers below us, talking about reifications of flat Earth models being archaic. That's what we get for telling our audience, use the scientific method. Stick to it, and you'll find out more about your reality with empiricism. And if you use that in this arena of debating about the nature of our Earth, you'll win against people who assert that the Earth's a globe. If you stick to the scientific method. I mean, this should resonate with everybody in the audience, not just flat earthers that listen to the show and go, yay, he's got him over a barrel with a question about whether or not they've established cause and effect and got empiricism for their claim when talking about a bloody star or something nonsensical like travelling to the moon. No, they haven't got any of this. None of it's scientifically validated. And this is how we're winning. With real science. Something that nobody in high up academia is ever going to disagree with you on. In other words, as a flat earther, you can argue this subject up to the level of academia, and unless they're indoctrinated globe-worshipping slaves or zealots, they can't disagree with you. You're the one who's right when you're arguing from the position of the scientific method, not the globe heads, not the people who believe the space is real. This is, to me, quite amazing. It was back when I first got hold of the information. It got quickly shattered. I'll mention him now. When I was told, oh no, this knife cuts both ways. One day you'll be chopping Bob Nodell's head off with the exact same information. But that aside, it's glorious, right? We're winning as flat earthers because we're adhering to the scientific method. Isn't that glorious? It is for me. I think it's fantastic. A method that's absolutely ingrained in academia and has established bettering society with technology based on the application of that scientific method. Things move on in life because of this method, and it's on our side as flatties. Wonderful. Sorry about my extended diatribe. Should we continue with the presentation?
No, it's warranted. It's like a nice warm blanket, isn't it?
Yeah. Knowing that you're right, and the people who are actually doing things that benefit humanity, not the ones coming up with just so stories, the ones that actually advance society. So, yeah, science doesn't seem all that useful when people present certain experimental data. You go, oh, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean a great deal to the general public until technology comes along based on that experiment. Then people are all for whatever it is that you're validating through systematic experimentation because it becomes useful to them, normally much further down the line. But nothing that's punted from the pseudoscience religion of a globe is useful. None of it's useful. The only things they pretend that are useful in their model were predicted long before the heliocentric model even existed. So their claim bloody predictions aren't that great. The fact that they've managed to wrap them around a sphere is just a testament to how much they want their religion to work. Doesn't actually do anything useful. Science, on the other hand, does. It progresses humanity, and it's on flat Earth's side. Make no mistake.
Awesome.
I concur with all of that.
Yep.
Hey, Chocolate. Just before we round out, I want you to recite George Moose's infamous words. Not right now, but before we round out, I'll come back to me at the end.
Okay. Not a problem.
That was invigorating. Let's get some.
I've got you back up. Should we carry on?
Yes. Let me know.
Yeah, you're on.
All right. The queen of the scientific method, scientific hypothesis. A scientific hypothesis is your experiment statement. It expresses a testable proposed cause and effect relationship, the phenomena that was observed in step 1. From Nature.com, California Institute of Technology physicist Sean Carroll, arguing in The Edge that hypotheses aren't simply useful tools in some potentially outmoded vision of science. They're the whole point. Duh. From Lowell C. Cambridge, a scientific hypothesis is based on what? Cause and effect reasoning. A scientific hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. From Drexel University, a scientific method is hypothesis driven. One makes an educated guess to explain a what? Cause and effect relationship. From Anne-Marie Helmenstein, PhD, Biomedical Sciences, a hypothesis is an educated guess based on observation. It's a prediction of what? Cause and effect. From Colorado State, a scientific hypothesis, a special kind of prediction that forecasts how the independent variable will affect the dependent variable. This is pretty simple, guys. Again, from Kristen McClellan, The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method, the hypothesis should also contain a prediction about its verifiability. For example, if the hypothesis is true, then 1 should happen when 2 is manipulated. The first blank, number 1, is the dependent variable. It depends on what you are doing in the second blank. And the second blank, number 2, is what? The independent variable. You manipulate it to get a reaction. There should be no other variables in the experiment that may affect the dependent variable, like we discussed above from the Institute of Physics. From California State University, formalized hypotheses contain 2 variables. One is the independent, and the other is the dependent. Right? Repeating refrain here, right? Shouldn't be too difficult. From University of Rochester Physics Labs, the scientific method requires that a hypothesis be ruled out or modified if its predictions are clearly and repeatedly incompatible with experimental tests. If you don't run experiments, you don't know whether it's incompatible or not. So you need an experiment. From California State, scientific hypotheses, again, a special kind of prediction that forecasts how the independent variable will affect the dependent variable. From the University of North Carolina, in an experiment, the independent variable is the variable that is varied or manipulated by who? The researcher. And the dependent variable is a response that is measured. An independent variable is the presumed cause, whereas the dependent variable is the presumed effect. The IV is the antecedent, whereas the DV is the consequent. It's an antecedent-consequent game. A scientific hypothesis is a supposition. Definition of a supposition from Merriam-Webster: something that is supposed, a hypothesis. A valid scientific hypothesis establishes a tentative possible supposed cause and effect relationship, which will either be confirmed or invalidated by the experiment. The hypothesis test. The cause and effect relationship is supposed. However, the independent variable, the cause existence, isn't supposed. This gets really confused, man. Check this out. So, for example, alternative hypothesis. Given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients, the lack of insulin on board will lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. The independent variable here is, or the cause, is the insulin or the lack of. The dependent variable, the effect or the prediction, is diabetic ketoacidosis. So, I'm not supposing or assuming the existence of insulin. It most certainly exists, The supposition is its effects. Duh. These clueless pretender clowns are so ignorant and desperate because their incoherent goose is cooked. They think because they see the word presumed, i.e. independent variable is the presumed cause, that then greases the skids and allows them to float presumptions or assumptions, sphere Earth, spinning Earth, etc., as independent variables. It's a convoluted gaggle screw from Mr. Magoo. You see, the independent variables effect is presumed. It's getting ready to be tested. See experiment. That's why it's just presumed right now. Not the cause, the independent variable itself. It exists. Next block of instruction, how to say the on Tuesdays. Here's some hypothesis examples. Number 1, heat will cause water to boil at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius at 1 atmosphere of pressure. That's 101.325 kilopascals or 14.7 psi. Number 2, given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients like the one above, the lack of insulin on board will lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. Number 3, if the which path information is known or can be known, then we'll observe wave function collapse. Number 4, if vitamin C intake is crucial to collagen integrity in humans, then eliminating vitamin C intake in humans will cause scurvy. These are viable scientific hypotheses with both independent and dependent variables. They are testable. What do they try to do next? Try to muddy the waters. They just Google independent, dependent variables, get their fingers a rocking, right? Without their mind engaged. And bring up this, a complex hypothesis. Well, QE, you can have 2 or more independent variables, not just one. Oh, really? So from the medical dictionary, a complex hypothesis examines the relationship between 2 or more independent variables and 2 or more dependent variables. Looks like my goose is cooked, right? Rot-row, Shaggy. University of Texas, there can only be one independent variable and one dependent variable in an experiment. Everything else that can impact the experiment must be kept constant and controlled, just like we talked about with the physics department at University of Rochester above, and Wiki, and all the other ones. They were saying this same statement. These are known as controls. You don't want to put them into or have it impact the independent variable, dependent variable relationship. See, this complex hypothesis nonsense is employed in epidemiological studies. Correlations, in other words. Remember, correlation doesn't equal causation. And in science, we are specifically looking at causation. So, from Cornell University, epidemiological studies can never prove causation. Can't make it any more simpler than that, folks. That is, it cannot prove that a specific risk factor actually causes the disease being studied. You see, we're into population health now, not physics. That's one problem. Epidemiological evidence can only show that this risk factor is correlated with a higher incidence of disease in population exposed to that risk factor, like I was saying, population health. The higher the correlation, the more certain the association. But it cannot prove causation. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, yeah. Clowns, you're done. Let's stop right there.
So at the beginning of that stint, you pointed out that that a hypothesis is a supposition. Now, this is why I stated earlier, the hypothesis on its own is useless. So you have a supposition. So it may be this, eh? Well, that's fascinating, but useless without being backed by systematic experimentation. And then you round it out nicely by using the correlation that is complex hypotheses. Now, there's a few people out there that would say, well, there are various different things, like plant growth, that have got multiple different causes, therefore can't be applied to science. In reply, theories are not like Cavendish, where you have multiple independent variables for a non-existent phenomenon. Paula. So, in that instance, you've got multiple experiments, each with their own independent variable, singular presumed cause of the effect. Upon validation of that singular cause, you might go forth to examine a different aspect and build a scientific theory. The point being that theories are based on multiple experiments, not single experiments with multiple independent variables. That's pseudoscience. It's not giving you a cause. And cause is what you're exclusively interested in when you do experiments. Just to nip that in the bud. Go to you again first, Paula. Anything to add?
Not really. I mean, it seems straightforward to me. I'm sure a lot of other people too, but it has to be said. But not really much to add. I mean, if in engineering school, if we had an experiment with too many variables, you just wouldn't pass. You wouldn't get credit for it because you have to isolate things, or you don't know anything, because if you change too many things in steps in your experiment, then you have to start over. And that's just engineering. That's not even quote unquote science. It's just common sense. If you're going to be precise, you have to eliminate things that's the falsification part, eliminate other possibilities and have controlled, what's the term I'm looking for, like they do in controlled studies where they have it's a blind, what is it? I can't think of the term. Anyway,
double
like
blind.
Yeah. Double blind takes. Yeah, and placebos and things like that. If they're doing medical studies, to have a fairly high degree of confidence in something, but even then, they can still find out later they're wrong. So it may, have some of the elements of the scientific method, but like you said, if there's too many variables or too many possibilities, it just isn't. And they don't like it. The ballers mainly, don't like it when we're very precise, even though that's what's required if they want to call it science.
Right.
Hold on a second.
Go on.
Hold on a second. I got something to add before she moves on, because she brought up double blind. Remember Sly Sparkane when we put his back up against the wall on the show on asking him what a hypothesis was? Of course, we knew he didn't know it, and he made an ass out of himself. But anyway, later on the next day, he said, well, this experiment is a double blind. Let me tell you something. There is no, and never has been, and never will be, a double blind or single blind experiment in physics or chemistry, you friggin' idiots, right? These are associated with epidemiological studies and medical studies. Never, ever will touch. It's so, I told my wife, I said, listen, I said, because she's got a background in chemistry also. And I said, so how many double blind chemistry experiments did you do? She looked at me like I had 25 heads. Honest to God. I said, that's the question. That's what somebody claimed here. You guys are retards. But thanks. Charles Flat Earth Math parroted that stuff off Sly Sparkade too, with Slick James Johnson. It was hilarious. Can you imagine a single blind or a double blind chemistry experiment? Just imagine this, that the chemist, he just starts sticking stuff together, right? But he doesn't know what it is, right? He a blast radius over millions of college campuses, right?
Well, depends on what they're going to be experimenting with, of course.
Well, no, because one of the
it's up to the people setting the experiment up.
No, one of the key details is you, the researcher, are going to manipulate that which you presume is the cause. So I know, let's stick a blindfold on and not know which things have been manipulated. It's just ludicrous.
To be fair, when you do a double blind in a chemistry or a physics experiment, it's actually kind of a social experiment on physicists or chemists.
Yeah,
it's what it turns into.
Yeah, you don't do chemistry and physics experiments double blind. Double blind and single blind have to do with treatment groups. There are no treatment groups in physics, you clowns.
I don't want to focus too much on what it's not. So just to reiterate Paula's point, so just to or even dumb it down a little bit, if you're doing basic troubleshooting, if you have a fault with something and there are multiple connections in a line and you want to find out what the fault is, it would be stupid to change two things. So I've got a hi-fi in front of me. That's a nice easy example. So you've got speakers, and then you've got a speaker wire, then you've got an amp, and then you've got an interconnect cable, then you've got a preamp, and then you've got another interconnect cable, and then you've got a source, a computer. Well, if the connection breaks down, you wouldn't start changing both the speaker cable and the interconnect cable because you wouldn't know which one had resolved the problem. So you do one thing at a time, one variable. So you test one cable and then eliminate it, as Paula says, and then move on to the next thing down the line. It's basic troubleshooting. But you wouldn't change two things at once because then you wouldn't know which one caused the change. It's just very basic, changing one variable so you know if that caused the effect. It's so simple. Anyway, Anthony, are you around? Let's see, hopefully. 50-50
Yeah,
chance.
I'm here.
Yeah,
For chocolate,
excellent. Any comments?
Not specifically with that. To be honest with you, it's not that difficult, scientific method. What's difficult is the way that they present it. They obfuscate it on purpose to make it sound difficult. It's literally as simple as what John says. It's cause and effect. It's that simple, but they use phraseology and terminology in a way to cloud what is simply what's causing that. So if we apply it to one of the phenomena that we do see daily, we see the sun appear to set. What's causing that? Well, they tell us the Earth's tipping backwards. Okay, so can they prove the cause of the phenomena is Earth tipping backwards? No, none of the tests prove it. All of the tests indicate that either the Earth is stationary or the sky's turning.
Hold on.
None of the tests show that we're turning.
Hold on. In science, what would you do? So your effect is the sun going behind a reified sphere edge, otherwise known as the arbitrary position where the sky appears to meet the ground, called the horizon. Well, you're saying the sun goes behind that. That's your effect. Fine. Phenomena. Great. No worries. Phenomenon. What would you do in science if your presumed cause is Earth tipping backwards, as you phrased it? How would you validate that as the cause if you were following the scientific method, Anthony?
You would perform your hypothesis. You would formulate your hypothesis where you would identify your independent variable and your dependent variable. You would also identify or correctly formulate your null hypothesis.
Okay. So once you've identified your independent variable, what do you do upon experimentation to validate or invalidate that which you presume caused this effect? So you're presuming Earth curve, in the example of a globe head, causes whoever's making that noise, can you mute? So you're presuming Earth turning causes the sun to set. If you were to validate that scientifically, what would it be that you would do to the independent variable to vary the independent variable? Correct, Anthony?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You would wiggle it just a little bit. I want to see you wiggle it just a little bit.
But what does that mean?
You've got to wiggle it.
Yeah. What does that mean? What's wiggling it mean? What would I do to...
You've got to manipulate it. You've got to move it forwards and backwards a little bit to prove that the sun is being caused by the Earth tipping backwards.
Excellent. So to summarise, in order to validate scientifically that the sun is setting behind a reified edge of a sphere based on an R value and reification of an arbitrary position where the sky appears to meet the ground, called the horizon. It's a mouthful. To validate it, you would have to vary and manipulate the presumed cause, which is Earth turning. So you'd have to vary Earth turning to validate that scientifically. Correct?
Correct.
Can you vary that which you presume your cause is in this hypothesis, which it isn't?
No.
So you can't scientifically validate this assertion.
No, don't be silly. Only Superman can spin backwards and vary the Earth turn.
So therefore, this is not a scientific prediction, and it certainly isn't validated empirically by science. It is in fact a pseudo-science just so story based on a Mystic Meg prediction.
Basically, yeah.
And a lot of presuppositions.
A huge number. I tried to get them all in. I didn't list them all, but I did a reasonable job with reifications of horizons and R values.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Anybody else got anything to add? Chocolate or Nth Man, Arwin?
Yeah, I
Same
just
old, same
never.
old.
Hold on.
I've
Go
just
ahead. Go
never
ahead,
met
10th Man.
Who?
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I just never met a blind scientist who couldn't do the scientific method yet. So as QE has the slide, Master Science, he's actually teaching what is science. And for them to say and run behind single or double blind tests and use that for the scientific method is ludicrous. It's just stupid.
Indeed. Chocolate? Anything to add?
Well, I have to admit that I haven't heard it in a while. That was Sly Sparkane and Charles Flat Earth Math. So that hasn't come out in a while. It just struck me when Paula said it. So let's not indict them if no one's doing it anymore.
No, it's fair enough. It's worth getting it in early because it's one of those things that just will do the rounds. They do. You know it, I know it. So I'm glad it's been mentioned, even though, like you say, it's not necessarily something they're punting at the moment. But Chocolate, have you got anything to add? If not, we'll move on.
Nah, it's pretty simple. If you're not manipulating anything, you're not conducting an experiment. So that's pretty much it, I think. I don't even need to say anything else.
Fair enough. Did you want to add something, Arwin?
Yeah, that I'm just really, really disappointed in Daniel in chat once again, that just refuses to accept all of these scientific standards that we're basically, setting down here. Like, that's it. That's really the fundamentals, and he just keeps on believing all the nonsense, despite hearing this quite a lot. But he's really
I need to object. Let's not mention Daniel's name because we're reifying a fallacy known as Troll-Earthies. Let's not talk about Daniel Arwin.
No, but I think that, look, the guy is pretty smart. He's just really caught up on this. He really believes that science has been liberated in this way. That's what they think. They think, no, it's not the scientific method because that's the old way. It's been liberated. It's liberal. They're now free from reality and can do what they want with it. That's what he thinks. So
what does that even mean?
Nonsense stories about it. The hidden variables. Yeah, that's called a controlled variable, Daniel. It's called a controlled variable.
Talking about isn't smart. Not the one. If you're talking about the one that's been in these threads for about a year and a half, Daniel and Trolls Riley, he's a daft muppet. He's got the IQ of a root vegetable.
I've seen him say somewhat smart things. It's just he gets caught up on this and turns into a total dumbass. It's just a waste.
Okay.
We need to have justice for root vegetables. That was unfair, John. You should take that back. It's not fair on root vegetables.
Never take it back.
God, I'm going to have to start sounding like bloody Ethan Woodley. Can we get this back on track a little bit, please? So, lovely. Yes, the trolls, we'll discuss them at great length, probably in the after show. But in the meantime, has anybody got anything else in regards to correlation, not being causation, multiple variables, or any part of the last presentation? If not, we'll move on.
Let's move on.
Right, I've got you back up. You're presented.
All right, if it isn't complex hypotheses that I went over previously, then some Weisenheimers say, well, what about math variables? That's where you got your variables from. No. Anne-Marie Helmestein, again, PhD, Biomedical Sciences. A variable is any factor that can be changed or controlled. In math, a variable is a quantity that can assume any value from a set of values. A scientific variable is a little more complicated. Plus, there are different types of scientific variables. Scientific variables are associated with the scientific method. Variables are things which are controlled and measured as part of a scientific experiment. Did you get it? Probably not. So,
just before you continue, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Can you just back off your mic a couple of inches just so you don't overload it?
Yep. Is that all for the gift eruption?
That was a gift eruption, yes.
There's a fellatio joke in there, John. I won't mention it.
Only I can.
You better
only I can
secure
take us
that,
off track.
Hudson.
Right, let's secure that shit. Right, anybody else? Go back on. Everybody go back. Right, I have to do it. Everyone get it out. Come on, if there's interruptions, I've caused this. I'm sorry, John. Any more? Pop yourselves on mute. I'll do the same.
I'm on mute.
Oh, God. All right, independent variables. This is the elephant in the room, right? So, from Penn State University, independent variable is what is varied during the experiment. It is what the investigator thinks will affect the dependent variable. Colorado State, the independent manipulated variable. The variable changed by who? The scientist. What the investigator is testing. Again, from University of North Carolina, in an experiment, the independent variable is a variable that is varied or manipulated by who? The researcher. And the dependent variable is the response that is measured. An independent variable is the presumed cause, whereas the dependent variable is the presumed effect. The IV is the antecedent, whereas the DV is the consequent. From the Institute of Physics, independent variable, the variable that is deliberately changed by who? The experimenter. From the University of Southern California, independent variable, the variable that is stable and unaffected by the other variables you are trying to measure. It refers to the condition of an experiment that is systematically manipulated by who? The investigator. It is the presumed cause. So, remember, viable independent variables must satisfy 3 criterion. Number 1, it is your presumed cause. Number 2, the researcher must be able to vary or manipulate it. Number 3, the independent variable must demonstrably exist before you use it in an experiment. All 3 criterion must be satisfied, not just one. Height, depth, width, length, distances, and time are not viable independent variables, for crying out loud. Examples. Number 1, the submarine was crushed at a depth of 10,000 feet. Did depth cause the sub to implode, or was it pressure? Number 2, the gentleman was so obese he measured 1 meter wide. Did width cause obesity, or was it laziness combined with excessive caloric intake? Number 3, over the course of the night, the sun suddenly appeared above the horizon. Did time cause the sun to appear above the horizon? Does time cause the difference of scores between the first and third quarters? You see how silly these are? Questions, comments?
I'm pretty sure that time is causing these trousers to get tighter and tighter. No? Could be excessive
Is it
caloric.
time?
I do have a real cause and effect relationship with time that does cause something. The more time that lapses, the stupider Fight the Flat Earth gets.
Not an independent variable.
But he definitely is getting stupider. Something's got to be causing it.
Yeah, the funders,
It's correlation.
the globeheads do like to assert that time causes all things sometimes. They like to have time as an independent variable. That's come up a few
The only
times
time,
recently.
Yeah,
The only
somebody was
time-
supposed to mirror a video about that, and they forgot.
Anybody
Not
got any
mentioned
comments?
any
Anybody?
names.
Paula, maybe?
Hello.
Go on, Owen.
No.
Yay. Oh, hello, Paula.
Hello. This is all reminding me of somebody used to troll me in the chat saying that time causes a car to move from point A to point B, and I kept saying, well, if the car isn't on, will it move? No matter how much time you get it won't move if it's not on and nothing pushes it. Time by itself won't make the car move, but this was denied repeatedly for a long time, and at that point, you're not talking to a rational person. You're just, wasting your time after that. Your time being wasted.
No
Boom,
pun.
boom. Which one did you have on your list? Was it time causing the scores between the first and third quarters or something like that?
Say again?
Yeah.
Your example was, does time cause the scores between the first and third quarters of a game of whatever?
Yeah, it wouldn't matter which game it was. Yeah. That's an easy one to evaluate. Yep.
Yeah, so ask yourself that. With the elapse of time, would that happen? Given that the game could be rained off completely and time would still tick by. Anyway. Anthony, or just gonna have to stop calling you Nth Man. 10th Man.
Yes, Mr. Woodley. The time is a conception, and they've been using that for evolution forever, saying given enough time, everything complex could form. So here they are, back to their old tricks. It doesn't keep up with the scientific method or facts.
Yeah, spot on. Chocolate, you there?
I'll say something.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I'm here.
It's the second time it's happened. Go ahead, Chocolate. You will get a chance, Arwin.
No, it's all good. I just wanted to say it's funny how these guys want to use time in whatever way they want to use it. So they want it to manipulate, they want it to cause things. They want to be able to just bend it and cause other things like forces or things that are not forces that act like forces, even though they're not. So this time being a concept, I don't understand why people don't understand that. It's just a concept that we assign. Can't bend it.
Wait,
you can't bend it.
I agree with you, but we've all focused on this time as an independent variable. When I think John's point is more that we could focus on any of the ones he listed. Forget the fact that you have distance being asserted as science when using models and reifying horizons into sphere edges. The point is that people use all sorts of crazy crap, not just time, and assert it as though it's a cause of things like width or distance or height. Height probably being the most common we hear. But none of these things are, that in the case of time, you've got concept. The fact, again, beyond that they reify that concept into something that you can bloody bend and giving you a non-force force that you can think of as a force called gravity, that's an aside issue. In this respect, we're just talking mainly, hopefully, if I can keep this on track, in regards to science, the things that are asserted as being viable independent variables that are absolutely not. Time just being one of the list. Arwin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost now, but time is basically derived from rhythmic properties of matter that respond to cyclical things that proceed by the duration of time. It just happened to be that way, and humans found consistencies, consistent patterns within this, like the frequency, electrical pulses within quartz, within pure quartz, and that they actually use that as a foundation for the stability of the time unit that we use in our watches. So time is a derived conceptual system that we use to measure durations of things. And the duration of things is basically the entropy by which things change. by which things are allowed to change. And
Sure,
yeah,
but
we conceptualize that as time.
I agree, but well, that's lovely. The point here is that it's not an independent variable.
No, exactly. It's derived. It's conceptual. It's
Please don't list off all the things time are again. Is again. Thank you, God.
it's not an independent variable.
Thank you. Oh God, thank you, Arwin. Right, I think this is the last part. Are we into the last stretch of this section of the grand presentation that is science?
We just got a couple smaller parts after this, but we'll get through it.
Okay, cool. Right, you're up.
All right, ready? All right, the null hypothesis. The entire goal of the scientific method is to falsify or reject the null. From California State, to do a hypothesis test experiment, you will actually have two hypotheses, the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, which are stated in such a way that they are mutually exclusive. You can't have both hypotheses be true. The null hypothesis is the conclusion that is considered the default. You will accept this hypothesis if you fail to find sufficient support for the alternative hypothesis, the one you're testing. You never test the null. It's tested indirectly through the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis from sciencenote.org. The null hypothesis, the zero difference or no difference hypothesis, predicts that changing one variable, the independent variable, will have no effect on the variable being measured, the dependent variable. It's very easy. Null, zero, zero difference. That's what null means, right? This isn't rocket science. The alternative and the null are stated in such a way, like I said above, that they are mutually exclusive. Both can't be true. For example, observe a natural phenomenon. Healthy type 1 diabetics suffer from diabetic ketoacidosis, apparently from the absence of adequate insulin on board. The alternative hypothesis, given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients, the lack of insulin on board will lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. The null hypothesis, given otherwise healthy type 1 diabetes patients, the lack of insulin on board will not lead to diabetic ketoacidosis. Two guys are constructed, right? It's too easy. It's a will or a will or not. That's all it is. The dependent variable, the effect or the prediction, is diabetic ketoacidosis. The independent variable, the cause, is insulin or the lack of. Very easy. In conclusion, here's a good look at these guys. The alternative hypothesis. Well, that's not lining up. One sec. Give me a minute. The alternative hypothesis, the null hypothesis, and the experiment. With the alternative, it's the independent variable, the cause, dependent variable, the effect equals the prediction of cause and effect. The null hypothesis is the independent variable plus the dependent variable, the cause and the effect, equals prediction of no cause and effect. And the experiment. Independent variable, the cause, the dependent variable, the effect, plus the controlled or constants equal prediction of cause and effect. So the only difference between the alternative and the experiment is the controlled variables are added, right? It's too easy.
Can we dwell on that? Can we have a break? Can we have a small break? I know this is unscheduled. That's new. I like that a lot. That's very simple and very easy to see visually what you're talking about on screen. I'm going to make this a bit bigger. Just give me a second. Do you mind if we have if we pause on this for a second?
No, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Get it on screen in a way that's nice, like you've got it but bigger. Okay. Everyone in the panel see this, right?
Yeah.
So this wasn't formally part of QE's presentation in this regard, but I like this a lot because it shows all of the constituent parts in every step of the scientific method. This is excellent. This is a really good teaching tool, Quantum Eraser. Kudos. This is nice. I like this a lot. So you can see it in every single instance, the cause and effect relationship, and the only difference in terms of the empiricism that is offered by this method is that giant red not being underlined. In other words, when you get to the experiment stage, you will either validate the alternative or validate the null. Now, I'll add this at this stage. You're never going to test directly the null hypothesis. You're only ever going to vary and manipulate your presumed cause and find out that it doesn't cause the effect, therefore validating the null. But you're not going to directly test that it doesn't cause the effect. That's ludicrous. So you only invalidate your hypothesis when your presumed cause was proven to be wrong. You guessed incorrectly. But that's what gives you the empiricism. You will prove or disprove based on the alternative and the mirror of the alternative, the null, which is the same, but for that not. It's saying that your prediction has two halves. One that says, I predict X. I predict X will cause this effect. And then in the mirror, I predict X will not cause this effect. And upon experimentation, providing it's all set up correctly and you've not done something incredibly stupid along the process, hence the word systematic. It's not just one dude doing one crazy experiment that doesn't really prove any hypotheses. It's based on lots of people validating it, making sure it's a correct setup. But that aside, the point is that the method upon completion, i.e. through experimentation, gives you one of two outcomes, and only one of two outcomes. You'll either validate your cause, yes, I've guessed correctly, this did cause the effect, or invalidate it. No, it did not cause the effect. But then when you get to, in this nice simplified 3 steps of the scientific method, independent variable, dependent variable, controlled variables, as John pointed out a moment ago, being added at the experiment stage, they're all essentially the same. You've got the same process, the same ingredients with all of it. And empiricism laid on screen, and I'll say this again, bolstering flat earth. You're not going to find any of this adhering to any assertion ever in regards to the heliocentric model. This will never be done. So I'm sorry if I dwelled on this for too much of a time, but I just think showing it in the way it is, the things we talk about almost daily on the show, independent variable, dependent variable, the cause and effect relationship, the null hypothesis, and the experiment that will give you the validation or invalidation of that prediction in such a concise, clear way is beautiful. It looks epic.
So in addition, that's the reason why when I did my egg experiment, my hypothesis was that if I add mass or density or salt or whatever, the independent variable was manipulating the medium, the density of the medium. And if I manipulate the density of the medium, it will cause the egg to move. And if it didn't do that, then the egg would not move. That would be the null. And at the end of my test, when I added my salt, you could see that something happened and the egg moved. You can argue about what happened, but the cause was me adding that salt, mass, whatever you want to call it. I added something and it caused that effect. Now, we know that the presumed cause is the thing that I manipulate. And I did manipulate something, and I did manipulate that medium. Exactly how you explain that? Well, you can either do one of two things. You can apply the definition of independent variable, which is the presumed cause being the cause of the effect when I manipulate it, or you can dismiss that, infer some other cause, and just completely walk outside of scientific method altogether, and I'll just go, yeah, you're a pseudoscientist. And if there's 6 of them in the room, they're all going to believe that gravity caused it. But the reality is the definitions support me. And that's why I stand by that. And I based that experiment that I did on this cause and effect logic that we're all working on. And it devastates their argument because they really want gravity to have caused something. And I caused it, didn't I? Because I give it a wiggle. And if I wiggled it, that's the independent variable that's the cause. So you can't infer anything beyond that unless you want to go into the realms of pseudoscience, which is exactly where gravity belongs.
Anybody else got anything to add to this unscheduled stop as Quantum Eraser grinds his teeth?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Arwin.
Right, so Daniel's continually whining on in chat about hidden variables, and he even just outright states that Feynman uses hidden variables.
Arwin, stop feeding the trolls.
We will come to them,
I wanted
though.
to ask John if Feynman has ever used the concept of hidden variables, like in a technical sense.
Who cares?
John?
Hidden variables are out of context with this discussion. Hidden variables are associated with non-locality. It has nothing to do with the scientific method. Daniel is a moron. Thanks.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. I thought so.
Nice little victory from the chat. Anybody else got anything to add? Sorry to have this unscheduled stop. I did think it was quite an important point to dwell on, though.
Can we stop reifying trolls?
It's no problem. Are we done with it? Do you have anything anyone else has to say about this? Okay.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
I'm on mute.
Howard, it's only funny once.
Right, moving on.
Okay,
You're still
we're ready.
presented. Go ahead.
All right. The entire goal of the scientific method is to elucidate, that is, reveal cause and effect relationships. That is, explanation by demonstration of the hows and the whys. That's how you get scientific theories, folks. Not describing the whats and the ises. So, a test for everyone out there in the audience. This is rhetorical to everyone here on the panel. Identifying a mitochondrion or Golgi apparatus in eukaryotes. Is this science from what we just went through up above? Identifying the spin of an electron. Is that science? Categorizing organisms in a taxonomic classification system. Is that science? Let's go through one at a time. Remember, we're looking for cause and effect, hows and whys. So let's ask ourselves a question. Is identifying mitochondrion or Golgi apparatus in eukaryotes a cause and effect, how-why question, or is a what is question?
I don't know what that is.
Anyone that can fog a mirror knows that it's a what is question. This is not science. Okay? Identifying the spin of an electron. Is this a what is question or a cause and effect, how, why question? Well, it's a what is question, meaning that this is not frigging science. Categorizing organisms in a taxonomic classification system is glorified secretarial work. Is this science? Nope. So, when somebody says, obviously, these upper two, I should have put them together, the top one, the first one, and the third one has to deal with biology, and the middle one has to deal with physics, right? When somebody says, is biology science, that's too ambiguous, is what I'm trying to say. You have to get hyper specific. When somebody asks you that, or you're claiming this, be hyper specific, because biology is a science. Yeah, most of it, right? Because biologists do experiments, but there is a whole slew of things in biology that are not science, right? So this is an example. This is a joke right down here, conjuring man-made conventions, right? So this isn't science. So what I'm trying to say is make sure that you're hyper-specific when you're dealing with crayon munchers that say, well, is biology science? Is this science? Is that science? Well, be specific. You know, the secretary that walks into the biology department, when she walks through the gates and has the arts of science, biology over the top, well, she's working in the department, but she's not doing very much science, is she? So there's an association there, but that's not science. There's a correlation here, but there's no science in here. Everyone understand this?
Yeah, we'll dwell on my ignorance in regards to mitochondria later.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah. We can stop right there real quick. We only have, I think, 2 more subjects we'll get through real quick. Do you want to stop here or do you want to continue?
Well, I'll leave it to the panel. Anybody got anything to add on this regard? In this regard?
If you mentioned Daniel R when you dumped.
Dumped?
Yeah.
What?
Don't worry, Arwin.
Nothing, go back to sleep.
Don't worry about it. Anybody got anything else to add in regards to the pseudoscience assertions, questions that aren't in regards to cause and effect, or the elucidation thereof? Anybody got anything to add?
Daniel's a retard.
Okay, looks like we can move on.
All right, one of our favorite topics, maths. Mathematics isn't science or physics, much like a tape measure isn't carpentry. One of the main reasons is they're different words. From Professor Balakrishnan and Professor of Physics, ITT Madras. Listen closely. That's the whole point about physics. It's not mathematics. So it's not a set of axioms from which you derive results. The rules of the game you prepare to change and subsume in an even broader framework. Oh, we got our axioms here. This isn't science, folks, right? He tells you this plainly. Let me say it again. That's the whole point about physics. It's not mathematics. You guys got that? Unbelievable. From the chair of physics at Yale, quantum mechanics. It's a theory which is based on experiment, not deduced by mathematics. Do you hear that? Quantum mechanics. It's a theory which is based on experiment. It's not deduced by mathematics. Yeah, you can describe it, quantum mechanics, using mathematics. Yeah, you have to conjure up. If they didn't conjure up complex functions, they wouldn't be able to even describe it. But it has nothing to do with explaining it. Big difference between descriptions and explanations. Maths don't prove reality. For example, 1 apple minus 6 apples equals -5 apples. And my favorite, give us the equation for germ theory. The beautiful and talented Betty Van Velsen crushed a master's degree in chemistry with this little itty bitty statement right here. Why? Because it was in response to his claim that mathematics is science. So Betty quickly, so if mathematics is science, he said, yes, give me the equation for germ theory. I'll tell you what, folks, if you ever seen, you remember George McFly and when he caught Biff taking liberties with Lorraine, and he put his fist down there in Greenbow, Alabama, and he came up through Mississippi and right around Kentucky and cold cock Biff. That's what it was like, man. It was glorious. That friggin' geodeceiver started stepping and fetching and asking people in the chat, his biologist buddies, hey, give me the equation for germ theory, please. And they're saying, they're giving them like the axe sign, like, no, change the subject. Tell her she doesn't understand. It was glorious. Glorious it was. I love it. That's all you need to do, because germ theory is science, right? Well, give me the equation. If math is science, well, give me the equation for germ theory. That ends that. I love it, man. Absolutely priceless. Math is immaterial and abstract, rigidly domain-specific, and at best merely describes. It explains exactly squat. Nada. Niente. Conversely, actual scientists are in the business of explaining phenomena by validating or invalidating cause and effect relationships between independent and dependent variables via rigorous hypothesis testing. Can you show one case in all of history where mathematics caused any phenomena? No. Can you show the laws of motion, equations, debunked by the way, causing a billiard ball to roll across a table? No. Unbelievable. This is cool. So, according to mathematics, there's an infinite distance between point A and point B, or between number 1 and number 2. If this sounds familiar, it's Zeno's paradox. That is, if I shoot an arrow from my back porch to the tree 20 feet away, the arrow should never reach the frigging tree. Why? Because there's infinite distances between them. It can never be negotiated, right? This is a joke, folks. Math is math in the context that it is. It's not science. It has nothing whatsoever to do with cause and effect relationships. Okay? Questions, comments?
Didn't you cover that on a couple of BALLBUSTERS ago, Paula, when you were describing you divide it down into subsections, and each subsection has got infinite subsections that you can divide into, and that's kind of been described, or I don't know if reified's the right word, but that mathematics has been reified into the example given by QE with the arrow.
Right. Yeah. It's a concept that drives you to absurdity, because even though it makes sense in their math world that you can have such a thing as infinity or imaginary numbers, it's not real. That's the whole point of it. I mean, how many examples do we need to say, you can't infinitely divide anything, and in reality, it doesn't exist anymore. If you break it apart too much, you have nothing discernible left. It isn't the thing it was anymore. So you can't keep dividing it because it doesn't exist anymore. And so math is just, it's a language, words can represent things, numbers can represent things, equations can help you predict the outcome of something, but it can't cause it.
Not scientifically predict. Be careful.
Right. But the thing is that it is a descriptive tool, not a measurement. It's an observation, a study, as we mentioned before about studies, they're just studies. They're just watching things, and they can't prove or disprove anything. They don't look for a cause. They don't try to manipulate anything. They just look at it. And that's pretty much what math does when you think about it. It observes.
Right, math is not reality. I'm pretty sure Anthony also gave an example of this that he sought out, where there was an example where you're subdividing hotel rooms and opening up more rooms within rooms. I can't remember the exact name of the paradox. You remember, Anthony?
Sorry, I didn't. I heard you mention Hilbert's hotel paradox. What was the question?
What was the name of it? You've just said it.
Oh, Hilbert's hotel paradox.
It's
basically the concept that you can have infinite amount of what they call patrons, and infinite amount of rooms, regardless of how big the hotel is. So 20 rooms, you can have 20 people. You can't have 600, or an infinite amount of patrons. You're limited to 20 or 60 or however many rooms you've actually got, obviously. But in mathematics, you can legitimately argue theoretical physics and claim that you can have 250. Not in the real world, though, can you? So that's the same reason why you can't have -5 apples.
But yeah, math is not reality. Another great example.
It was the Roach Motel. Roaches check in, but they don't check out. It's like BallTARDS. They check in, but they don't check out.
Anybody else? Is there one more section, QE?
Yeah, I got something.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of when I first got into flat Earth, that Nikola Tesla's quote, "Today scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality." I think that rounds it off nice.
Yeah, globe Earth. Any more for any more?
This is the last section.
Okay, so there is a link to Discord. We've got at least maybe 15 minutes, maybe 10 after this next section. We'll see how long it goes, but there is a link to join the discussion if you want to express your opinions on anything that's been discussed. So yeah, I'll pop you back up on screen. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites, models from their alma mater wiki. Oh, I screenshotted this, by the way, just in case any of you pretender clowns go in there and try to change us, which I'm expecting. So, like I said, from the alma mater wiki, reification, also known as concretism, hypothesization, or the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, is a fallacy of ambiguity when an abstraction, that is, an abstract belief or hypothetical construct, is treated as if it were a concrete, real event or physical entity. In other words, it is the error of treating something that is not concrete, such as an idea, as a concrete thing. A common case of reification is the confusion of a model with reality. The map is not the territory, folks. Now, this definition is not stating that somebody thinks that a model, that they're living in a model, right? That's not what they're saying here. It would be a better way to state it as there is a fallacy component, which BallTARDS do, and there's an insane component where you should be taken away, to Shady Meadows. Nobody thinks that they live in a model unless they're insane. Okay. So you can drop that doofus argument. On to Stanford. Let's see what Stanford has to say in regards to models. Models in science. There are probing models, phenomenological models, computational models, developmental models, explanatory models, impoverished models, testing models, idealized models, theoretical models, scale models, heuristic models, caricature models, didactic models, fantasy models, toy models, imaginary models, mathematical models, substitute models, iconic models, formal models, analog models, and instrumental models. Is that clear? And then they round it all off by stating models play an important role in science, but despite the fact that they have generated considerable interest among philosophers, there remain significant lacunas in our understanding of what models are and how they work. So, lacunas? What the heck's that? Lacuna from Merriam-Webster, a blank space or missing part, gap, deficiency. So this says there remains significant blank spaces, missing parts, gaps, and deficiencies in our understanding of what models are and how they work. Right? They just contradicted themselves. All this is a circle jerk. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. Right? But I do. From Indiana University Chemistry Department, the important point that Becker introduced is that the explanation of a natural phenomena, model, or theory, we'll get back to this, must be testable by experimentation. In other words, once a model is proposed as an explanation of a phenomena, listen up, it can only be considered a scientific model if it can be objectively tested by experiment. So, Globies, you have a scientific model, eh? Okie dokie. Natural phenomena observed, please. Alternative hypothesis, please. Independent variable and dependent variable, please. Null hypothesis, please. You can't get out of it, right? You're cornered 6 ways from Sunday. Last part, common mistakes in applying the scientific method, will round out with this. From the University of Rochester Physics Department, the most fundamental error is to mistake the hypothesis for an explanation of a phenomena without performing experimental tests. Sometimes common sense and logic tempt us into believing that no test is needed. There are numerous examples of this dating from the Greek philosophers to the present day. All the BallTARDs and evolutionists, whatever that is, have is explanations or just so fairy tale stories. They've mindlessly parroted from their pseudoscience priests. They don't even have a hypothesis for an explanation. They just have a story, an explanation that they give. What's your explanation? I don't know, but what's your explanation? I'm not sure. Do you have an explanation? It's a frigging circle jerking joke, right? You have no idea what science is. You have no idea what the scientific method is. You should be picking up cans alongside of the road. Supervised. Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Well, on your list, did you have meteorological studies?
What list are you talking about?
Pseudosciences. The reason I ask is, I was thinking, what can I give as an example of something that people would recognize instantly as a reification that they don't employ? And I was thinking, would the weather be a good example, where most people appreciate that the weather, if you were to show them a week-long or a year-long weather forecast in a simulation, for you to say, well, that is what the world will do, that's the world we live in, most people would recognize instantaneously that that would be reifying a model into existence. So they say, oh, it's a useful guide for what the weather might do, but obviously the weather forecast's wrong. That's not reality. It's just a guess. It's not science. They're just making predictions that might come true based on former correlations. So in that example with weather forecasting, most people recognise that they shouldn't go as far as to reify that into the actuality of the world they live in. They just use it as a guide for the weather that's often proven wrong. But when it comes to the modelling of the heliocentric world, they'll absolutely reify it into existence and say, yes, that is how the world is. So in that example, people will say, yeah, but I'm not saying we live on the model. In other words, if you were to hold up an azimuthal equidistant projection of a sphere and say, this is the model of the world, their rebuttal is to say, well, I'm not proposing that we're standing on that plastic model. It's like, no, that's not what it means. It means that the idea that's presented by a weather forecast, if you were to take it as the world you'd actually live in, that would be reification, which most people would fall short of because they recognise that the predictive capabilities of that model aren't the reality we live in. But when it comes to their pseudoscience application of a religious model with the sun at the centre and Earth as a sphere, they absolutely declare that that is where they live. By definition, reification. So we'll go around the BALLBUSTERS panel. We're also joined by Acum Virus, Sean G, Righteous Force, and Unicorn Laser Eyes, who we'll get to after we go round with the BALLBUSTERS panel for maybe the last time. So we'll start with Arwin. You got anything to add in that regard, Arwin?
Not really. It's just, yeah, it is what it is.
Chocolate?
No, I'm pretty good. I think John killed it again, so good presentation, man.
Paula?
I was just thinking he left off one thing from the models list. That would be fashion models, because they're not real either.
Fair enough. 10th man?
Yeah, that was great, John. Great present. Comment, we're not the ones going to wiki and changing things.
Yeah, science is on our side. Last but not least, Anthony, anything to add?
Everything's conclusively done. It's comprehensive. Keep it simple, stupid. Cause, effect. Them two words is basically everything that you need. If it's not cause and effect, it's not science. It's not experiment. It doesn't satisfy the definition for science. It therefore must be something else.
Tony wanted Chocolate to remember something about George Mooser.
Is that the end of the formal presentation now, John?
Yes.
Yes.
Come on, Chocolate, give us the infamous line from Georgie Mooser in reference to gravity.
All right. You're talking about the really is one. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the one where he says gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force, because you have this really nice way of saying it.
You sure it's that one, or is it the other one? Well, I'll give you the one I usually do. The we can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. Now, that doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level.
Well, what I want to
Classic.
do, that is beautiful. You've obviously memorized that many times to be able to regurgitate that verbatim, and I'm sure it is verbatim. I just want to I want to give a little bit of background. I had a disagreement with Geo Strieber. He's one of the Sean Huffroad guys, and we were arguing over how fast the new hard drives are. M.2 drives against N.2 NVMe drives against N.2 PCIe hard drives, and he was he got something that I got wrong. He got right, and I bet we had a gentleman's agreement where I would bet him a Stein because he's a German national, and I owe him a Stein. So in the concept, if we apply the logic and the reason for what George Mooser said to what's his face, Fight the Flat Earth, let's just hear what George Mooser says, and then I'll pay back the Stein that I owe Geo Strieber. So let's hear what he says now. He says,
force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way to think. Have it is not
Sound is low and echoey.
Yeah, that's
Oh, hang on. It might be because I've not got it through there. Let me just do this again.
slick, very slick.
Having you, gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way.
So, let me turn off. So, gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. So, in that context, let me stop screen sharing. So let's apply that logic that now I want my camera to come on. Come on. Don't let me down now, technology. Nathan, can you see me? You can. Am I screen sharing?
Screen sharing, the same thing you were. Very slick.
GeoStreamer. This Stein is not your
You're not screen
Stein.
sharing. You're not got your camera on. No.
Nope.
Stop sharing.
Your video's frozen. Oh, yeah, I can see you now.
Am I moving?
Yeah.
Okay, so GeoStreamer, like George Musa says, gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a
I
force.
still haven't got you on screen.
Hold on. Nathan, you're
still
not
haven't got you on
presenting.
screen. Someone else must be screen sharing because I haven't got you.
I can turn it off and turn it back on.
Try that.
It might be because I was screen sharing at the same time. Is that
Just
working?
turn it on speaker view.
Just do it.
Can you see it or not, Nathan?
No, it just doesn't. It's just got 10th man icon.
I can see Tony.
Right,
Then you
but
see
he's
him
not
on
on speaker
his
view in
tiny icon.
YouTube.
I can put you on so tiny.
That'll do. Put me on someone tiny.
That'll do.
So if we apply the logic of what George Musa said, that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. This is not GeoStreamer's payback Stein, but GeoStreamer can think of it as GeoStreamer's payback Stein. So now my debt is paid. I owed him a Stein, and you can think of it that I've paid him his Stein.
Cannonball!
So the guys, you're all on mute in Discord. About 5 minutes left of the live show. Any comments? Tumbleweeds from Discord, of course.
I don't know why they come in, Nathan.
Discord. Hello, Discord.
Typically, this is what happens every live show, Anthony, and then when the after show starts, they'll all pipe up.
I know who's on Discord.
Hey, Pillbox, hold on a second. Is it
the person?
Hey, what?
Oh, I refreshed it just as he started talking, of course. Go ahead, Pillbox.
Crickets. I was waiting for Sean G to say something about it. I don't know if anybody here is a globalist, but I'm still waiting for an intelligent rebuttal in the chat. So that's where I spent a little bit of time earlier. I'm waiting for any rebuttal at all from. I mean, it's only been 2 years, Nathan. Is there going to be some sort of intelligent response? I mean, besides fogging the mirrors.
Doubt it. We've won the argument. There is no doubt about it, Pillbox. Earth is obviously and observably flat and motionless, and science is on our side. This has been a very devastating presentation for globe heads that are out there.
I mean, you got people in the chat literally saying there's no experiments. And now I personally, I know that I'm going to be critiqued because I don't claim to be doing experiments, yet I do make a prediction and I take flight. Since, both of us have flown many times, you understand. Now that when we take a flight, we make a prediction. I bet I'm going to see a flat plane. And then we see a flat plane. Now, I don't know if that qualifies as an experiment. I don't know if there's any variables in there.
No.
I mean, you're going to have to insert something for me. I don't think that's an insertion of a technical experiment. The point is, you can make a 30-minute video and just ask them to watch it, and they won't watch it. So what are they trying to accomplish? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. If you were to write a novel about these people, that no one would ever believe it. You'd never get it published. They would say, no, this is not realistic. Yet this is exactly what we've been experiencing for years now. You can't make this up.
It's self-enforced cognitive dissonance. That's what they do. They keep
And the people
themselves
claiming
systematically
experiment, they're using the word
in the dark.
experiment, but they don't have an experiment. See, I'm not claiming experiment. I claim that I go up into an airplane and I observe the plane. I'm not claiming an experiment. I'm claiming that I can observe what the Earth looks like. If it was this heliocentric ball, we should experience a heliocentric ball. But in reality, we don't. Anybody can spend $175 and take a flight anywhere in the world anytime and experience the actual Earth in reality. And then when you do it and you try to show it them, they absolutely refuse to look at it. So what is this exactly? I think what you've done, Nathan, is that you've created this psychological experiment. But I think you're going to have to start making some predictions, because you're really delving into the psyche of people that have been programmed. It's like, because they've been programmed already, it's like trying to convince a computer that's been programmed. They can't think outside of what they've been told to believe.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you want to hear the continuation of this conversation, then, and you are watching on Nathan Oakley 1980, then stay tuned. But unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Quantum Eraser channel, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to all of the BallBusters panel and Discord server for making this live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley 1980 programming stream, and I'll see you all in the next BallBusters.